This is the Sportsfan Radio podcast. Today I'm talking with noted tennis expert Brett Phillips, the host of SEN's The First Serve. Brett spent his 2025 covering the world tennis circuit, starting off in Chile and finishing up in Milan. He returned to Australia in November and he's just wrapped up his coverage of the Australian Open. Welcome back to the show, Brett.
Thanks very much, Mark. Always nice to be on with you.
Now, 23 tournaments, 38 flights, 16 train trips. Was the year as gruelling as it sounds?
Yeah, I'd call it a combination of exciting, exhilarating, exhausting, all in one. You know, probably a deeper appreciation for the Australians who, apart from, 1 month at home, are basically travelling the world, plying their trade for a good 10 months. They can't just duck home to Australia. They've got to stay on the road for a lot longer. So I think I've got a deeper appreciation of that. But yeah, the one thing you realise is that we are one little small part of a big world of tennis, and it moves really quickly. It moves from one city to the next. Often I would be sort of thinking, what the hell, what time zone am I in? What country am I in? But that's how I wanted to live it. You know, I put a template together based around the Grand Slams, based around the Masters events, and then sort of filled the gaps with 500s, 250s, Laver Cup, ATP finals, Davis Cup at the end of the year. And, wanted to really live that on a week-to-week basis. So one thing certainly that stands out to me is everywhere you go, it's their version of the Australian Open. So if it's a 250 in Buenos Aires, we know that Argentina's got a rich tennis history. They have a 250. They'd love a 500. They probably love a 1,000 tournament in South America. But the cues, the passion, the excitement, it's all there. It's their chance to see the best tennis players in town. So whether it was there, whether it was in Tokyo, whether it was in Vienna, it's their big week on the tennis calendar. And yeah, they sort of ask, like they'd hear the accent and where are you from? And I'd say, I'm Melbourne. Oh, the Australian Open. You're so lucky to have a Grand Slam, and absolutely I am, to have one 10 minutes from home, considering that the rest of the tennis epicenter is a hell of a long way away. You feel lucky you've got one in your own backyard.
So I followed your tour on social media posts, and what you just mentioned certainly came through. How long did it take you to plan the trip? Because it seemed to work like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, probably about, a year before I left, I put together the first sort of itinerary, the draft, and made a few little modifications. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to take in South America originally. Do I start in Indian Wells to give myself a break after the Australian Open? Was I going to go and do it for 12 months or 6 months and maybe do it across 2 years? So there were lots of different thoughts, and I thought, no, let's go and do all this at once. And even though the Australians traditionally don't play in South America, I wanted to go and get a taste of South American tennis. I've watched all those tournaments on TV for a long time, and I thought, well, a place like Rio, such an iconic place in the world, that I wanted to actually go and see it for myself. So yeah, it took a bit of planning, and certainly getting partners on board, putting a financial model behind it to make it sustainable, and then certainly sorting out how we're going to broadcast on a week-to-week basis, and then what sort of content we were going to put together. So a lot of planning into that. So it was a good year, but it was exciting, and basically, I did the whole lot myself. You're the travel organizer. You've got to organise accreditation for every single tournament you go to. Not like an AFL season where you get one pass for the whole season. You've got to go and apply for all the different accreds. There were visas on a couple of occasions to get into China and Saudi Arabia. So that was, a little nerve-wracking at times getting all that done, and deadlines. But it was a great experience. Really, it was taking the office on the road that we would have here, and burning the midnight oil. But certainly probably more respectable hours, certainly being at the tennis, but you were doing a lot also to fit in with the Australian time zone outside of the tennis on site. So big days, big weeks, but had a ball.
So given the largeness of the tour that you went on, what insights did it give you for the difficulties faced by our tennis players for a continual life on the road for 11 months?
Yeah, look, it's certainly challenging. I think particularly when you're not in great form and you're going out early in tournaments, you've got a lot of lag time. Some Australians will have a place they can go to, like a Jordan Thompson has a little base there in Tampa in Florida. Chris O'Connell has a little base in Split in Croatia. Alex de Minaur and Alexei Poprin are effectively living in Europe. That's their base where they can duck home in between tournaments when it allows. But for a lot, they'll do big blocks and they might be on the road for 3 months at a time. You can't just return home and down tools, particularly if you're trying to build a ranking. You've got to stay on the road, play the next tournament, and try and really stay fit and healthy. So yeah, it's grueling. I think by the time I got to October, I thought this would be a perfect end to the season, and that's what I think the tours are trying to work towards. 2028, we think is going to be moving year with the calendar, with the new Saudi Masters coming in. They're going to buy back some tournaments. Can we finish at the end of October? I asked Andrea Gaudenzi, the ATP chairman, at the ATP finals in Turin, how many weeks do you think the players ideally should have off? His figure was about 7, where they actually put down the rackets and then get into a pre-season. So there's lots on the table. But no one wants to give up their real estate either, Mark. Everyone wants to keep their tournament. It's their crown jewel. It's one of the big ticket items, particularly when I was in Washington. I remember the ATP WTA 500 there. That's their huge event. It actually outdoes most sporting events that are in Washington, D.C. No one wants to give up their real estate, trying to fit into the calendar, and everyone's going to compromise to a certain degree. It's a great sport. It's global. It touches so many. I saw so many different types of fan bases around the world, and I made a pact to sit courtside, sit amongst the crowd, and feed off that and just smell it, taste it, feel it. So yeah, it's a great tour, but it does need improving. There's so many areas to pull apart in order to please the players, the tournaments, but most importantly, you've got to engage the fans and give them the best experience possible.
Okay, what was your best moment during the tour?
Yeah, well, I love Indian Wells as a spot. So everyone will just tend to ask me, what's my favourite tournament? When I went to Indian Wells, I told people my itinerary and they said, you're going to Monte Carlo. It'd be interesting how you compare Monte Carlo with Indian Wells, 2 iconic stops. I love Indian Wells because it's out in the middle of nowhere in the Coachella Valley. So it's out of a big city, the mountains, the palm trees, weather's magnificent, except at night, desert gets a little cold. I'd actually play that tournament during the day. I'd start earlier. It's an older clientele who go. They'd probably love to go to dinner at a normal time at 6 o'clock, and golfers tee off early. Why can't tennis players play maybe early in the mornings? That's, I think, something that I would consider. But yeah, Indian Wells, and then Monte Carlo, an iconic stop on the tour. I absolutely love that. When your office looks over the Mediterranean, you just thought, how good's this? But jam-packed, just think if anyone has been to Monaco, just knows how small that whole principality is. They actually fit a Grand Prix track in there, which is extraordinary, and they fit a tennis venue, which is sort of on a cliff, and all you do is walk up and down steps all day. It's a crowded site, so if you suffer a bit of claustrophobia, you're in a bit of strife. But I could duck into the media centre. I loved that. And I think Italy at the end of the year, because right now Italy are the centre of the tennis universe. They're just flying. They've got world-class players. They're Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup reigning champions. They've got a great development system. They're the envy of everyone at the moment. So many tournaments there. And you could feel it at the end of the year. Davis Cup when they won, to be there in Bologna, to be in Turin, Sinner wins the ATP finals. They've got a bit of a spring in their step, the Italian tennis fans. They know they're top of the tree, but I thought the atmosphere, there's something about those indoor sporting events, a pulsating atmosphere. They're just a few of the highlights.
Would you do it again?
Well, definitely the bug is there to travel. I think as part of what we do with the First Serve, you need to be on the road for a certain part of the year. It's really tough to replicate 40 weeks every single year. Yes, I could do it, but then, your home is here in Melbourne and, you don't want to be necessarily away year in, year out like that. But I think certainly for the Grand Slams, Indian Wells, which was regarded as the 5th major, that's the sort of simple template for me going forward. And then it'll just depend on what the finances allow and everything else, Mark. But yeah, there are a lot of reporters, not necessarily who spent the amount of weeks I did on the road. People sort of thought it was something they hadn't seen before, a reporter going around the world for the whole year. There are reporters who report outside of their region, who go to the majors for the big newspapers, big TV outlets. But there are a lot of journos who just cover their local tournament, who don't cover tennis all year, who might be at the Japan Open or Rio or Buenos Aires. So I met a lot of great people who you could certainly utilise on the road, a lot of freelancers out there. It just makes it a little trickier being based out of Australia, I've got to say, to just put together okay, well, I'm going to go to Italy. Well, for the French journalists, they can catch a 1-hour flight from our part of the world, much more expensive and much more taxing. So, yeah, maybe I should have thought about this 10, 15 years ago when I was in a different stage of life and go, wouldn't be bad to base yourself over in Europe and do it, but it's a job you can become sort of married to, Mark. I think there's a lot of reporters on the road who tennis has probably led to them getting divorced, to be totally honest.
All right, let's turn to the Australian Open, just concluded. My thoughts on it were that the semi-finals and finals probably saved the tournament. I lost a bit of interest, I must admit, until we got to the finals. Didn't help that the majority of the Australian interest was out very, very early in this tournament. How did you see it?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm in the real cocoon and the bubble of it, and we did a lot of calling and a lot of matches sort of blend into another. And sometimes I can call a straight sets match, but go, wow, that was good tennis. It might be 7-6, 7-5, 7-6, and you watched a great battle. But yeah, I mean, largely, certainly the narrative around going to the second week is all the big seeds were left. There weren't too many that dropped out, which I think is good. That you've got the best sort of up there competing, and some of those best ranked players hadn't won a Grand Slam before, so you were going to potentially get a new champion. But yeah, there wasn't sort of the smoky or a withering run from qualifying or a lower ranked player having a one-off run this year. I think we had certainly in the first week the whole situation with Stan Wawrinka, which produced an amazing atmosphere around the site to win a 5-setter. His farewell, that certainly got a lot of traction. Yeah, realistically, from an Australian point of view, our only hope of having a run was Alex de Minaur, and as soon as the draw came out, we thought, okay, you're going to play Alcaraz quarterfinal if you get there. So the reality is, I mean, how does Alex right now beat Carlos? It's not mission impossible, but gee, it's hard. He's now 0-19 against Sinner, 0-13 now. Carlos 0-6. We knew that was going to be a stumbling block, but it's interesting. We sort of convinced ourselves going into that match just over a week ago that this was his best chance. I mean, you didn't. Just the way he'd been playing and that Carlos had never won in Australia and got past the quarters, you were sort of thinking that. Yeah, Alex felt closer than he ever had been. Once again, Carlos just, too big. And, Alex is flying the flag absolutely for Australian tennis by the length of the Flemington Straight right now. But he's, at the moment, in the landscape of men's tennis, he's got a certain ceiling. It's hard. It's not just him. It's everyone else trying to chase down the big two who could feasibly dominate for the next 5 years.
Yeah, the results speak for themselves and confirm that Australian tennis, aside from Alex de Minaur, is certainly lagging behind. How do we get more Australians into the top 100 winning Grand Slam matches?
Yeah, look, it's a topic of discussion, no doubt. I wrote a piece for our website going back on the 3rd of January that I felt this could be the most barren time in Australian tennis's history. If you look at the measuring sticks of have we got anyone that can win a Grand Slam right now, you would say no. Have we got a group of players on both the men's and the women's side, a big group of players who could be a top 50 cohort? You would say no. Have we got a group that can be a big group of top 100 players? And I would say no. Our men have aged quickly. Our women have still got some work to do. As good as Maya Joint has risen to where she is, that those other younger Australians and Taylor Preston, Talia Gibson, Emerson Jones, etc., they've still got to crack the top 100. So we give them certainly some time, but we need to raise the bar, Mark. I feel like, even at the Australian Open, it was, Maddie Inglis made the 4th round. Well, she probably wouldn't have beaten Osaka in the 3rd round. She got a little leg up there with Osaka pulling out, and she's never made the main draw of any other major, and that was 4 years since she'd made the main draw of the Australian Open. And we sort of celebrate, our players making the 2nd round or the 3rd round. I just think we need to raise the bar. I mean, that's something I could talk to you for an hour about. We're continuing to look at it on the first serve, the state of play, talking to Tennis Australia, talking to a lot of people who are, passionate about the game. It's great to have the Australian Open. It's a magnificent tournament, lights up January, but in a sense, it sort of papers over the fact that we're not producing any players. We're a Grand Slam tennis nation that make a hell of a lot of money as a federation. Now, not to say that all that money should be poured into player development. It's not all on the governing body. This is the coaches, this is clubs. It's the kids themselves, the youngsters who are coming through. Have they got the mental fortitude and, this is a tough sport out there. I mean, you're playing against just about every country in the world and everyone's desperate for success. But I just think we've got to raise the standards a little bit and not just accept being where we are right now. So there's a lot of work to do in player development, the player pathway. There's been lots of reviews that have certainly gone on. And the questions we're asking at the moment, have Tennis Australia got the best personnel in place? I think there's a strong argument that they haven't. Have we got the best quality coaching in the country? There's an argument that we haven't. And there's one name who's not in Australian tennis right now who Australian tennis needs, and that is Darren Cahill. Now, Darren Cahill has been an unbelievable coach around the world, one of the best coaches the world of tennis has ever seen. He's in obviously the Sinner camp right now, and I know for a fact that he would love to come back and be a big factor in Australian tennis and help. Now, how we get to that, and he's ready to almost, come home to Australia and put his feet down. He's been travelling for a long time. We need people of that ilk to come back. There's a few ex-Australian, Mark Woodford, there's Pat Cash, there's others who are perhaps not seeing eye to eye with the governing body, but they need to be welcomed back, and let's get our kids up to scratch.
Yes, certainly it appears something needs to be done. I had a look through the junior draw, which not many people do. A lot of Australian qualifiers got a free pass in. There are a lot of wildcard UCs next to the Australian names. Only one seeded girl and no seeded men or no seeded boys. So, and they're all out by the second round.
Yeah. And I think it was, I think we had 18. It was 0 of 18 by round 3. I think, we're all totally done. So there's a lot of work to do. I have a book that I keep here of all our players that have an ITF junior ranking from 14 years of age upwards. Their names that I keep an eye on week to week. What are they doing? How are they tracking? There's no shortcuts. You have to roll the sleeves up. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, are we a bit disadvantaged? We only have 27 million people. We're nowhere near the epicenter of tennis." But I don't think they're excuses really. So the high performance area is under the microscope right now, and we can't accept where we're at. We need some players to really come through and shine and be in the top echelon of the sport. So we're going to, as I said, we're going to pull that apart a lot because it's very important to a lot of people who follow tennis in this country.
Yeah, obviously need somebody to drive it because you've been on our show at least 4 times and we always get back to the same question of how we're going to improve tennis. And that 4 or 5 times you've been on is over a number of years. We don't seem to be getting anywhere though.
Well, I mean, look, certainly tennis, if we just think of the competition here in Australia, we're probably not always getting the most talented kids who gravitate to the team sports, footy and soccer and cricket and a whole heap of other sports. Tennis has also got to be appealing too. It's a sport where there's a lot of risk. I mean, I always associate it with you sort of starting your own business on the road. That's not easy. That takes some risk and investment. Obviously, Tennis Australia will identify the best kids and they will offer them funding. But for a large group, it's needing parents who can fund this journey, getting third party sort of outside sponsors. So when you're a kid coming through, and there is a dropout factor in the teenage age groups with tennis. Some just are gravitated to it because they love being in control of their own destiny. It's on me. I'm going to give it a crack, and the parents will back them. But for a lot of kids, it's sort of, like, how do I make a future out of this? How do I make a living out of tennis if I am aspirational with how tough the pathway is? Now, a lot of our youngsters are starting to go down the college pathway, probably more than ever, which I think makes a lot of sense. You go over to the US college, you have you get a degree as well. You play a high volume of tennis. They have all the facilities there to make you better. And you come out a little more battle-hardened, a bit more mature, say at 22, then try and hit the circuit and have some success. So a lot seem to be going down that path. I think TA are probably trying to steer a lot down that path as well. There's lots of layers to it, but we've got to get better.
Okay. Craig Tiley's thought bubble of 5 sets for women tennis. Is that his farewell to Australia, or do you see him sticking around for the Australian Open next year?
Well, we're waiting. We're waiting, Mark. Asked me about a week and a half ago. Certainly, we put up an article on our website. Linda Pearce, award-winning writer, had spoken to a lot of people, and we were convinced, yes, that it's a done deal. He's going to the USTA, but there's been nothing at this stage. And obviously, he wasn't prepared to buy into any of the speculation. The conspiracists will say that he's done this before to just up his bargaining power at Tennis Australia. He's been here for 20 years. He's the most powerful man in Australian tennis. No one in tennis at the 4 Grand Slams has the dual role of CEO and tournament director. So he has very much had a monopoly over the sport. So we've seen a change of chair with Jane Herdlicker departing in the last couple of months. Chris Harrop coming in. Not sure how that looks behind the scenes. He was already on the board. Still, I spoke to a couple of people yesterday. They still seem convinced that Craig is going. He's their number one target at the USTA, but until we get an official announcement, we're just not sure, because certainly a lot that was coming out of Craig's mouth last week was him talking about his future plans for the Australian Open and the precinct and record crowds. But, gee, we need to even extend the footprint further to make the whole experience comfortable for everyone with the demand. So he's talking like someone that's staying, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. If he does go, I definitely think they'll split the role, CEO and tournament director. And then how would TA look under a different leadership is what intrigues me.
And how about 5 sets for women tennis?
I'm not against it, whether that's just the final or the final and the semi or the final, semi and quarters. I'm not totally against it, but my feeling is that all 4 slams have to be on the same page here. I can understand we can be different for the mixed doubles, which the US Open decided to do their own thing last year and have the mixed doubles over 2 days in the week leading up to the main draw. It certainly put more eyeballs on it, a full Arthur Ashe, and I think they're planning to do the same this year. I'm not sure if the other 3 slams will follow, but the singles is the pinnacle where you can't have one slam playing best of 5 and everyone plays best of 3. So from a record book's point of view and just credibility and everything else. So whether there's going to be a lot of extended conversations with the playing group, which I'm sure are going to be divided on this. I mean, credit to Craig. Look, Craig loves to throw things out there. He's innovative. He's got a great passion for the game. He wants to, drive change and thinking outside the square and all that sort of stuff. So I don't mind that aspect. Tennis can be slow to change. We'll have to wait and see, but not totally against it.
All right, let's finish on this one. A gripe from me, the misuse of the words Grand Slam as a concept. I woke the other morning listening to the words that Alcaraz is the youngest person to ever have a career Grand Slam, and I immediately started grinding my teeth, because if you're going to win a Grand Slam, it's got to be within a year, calendar year. That was watered down a little bit, that if you won it at any time within a 1-year period, and maybe that's okay, but talking Grand Slam like that seems to just reduce or minimise the achievements of Laver, Budge, Connolly, Court and Graf, are the only ones to ever do it.
Yeah. No, I'm guilty, Mark, too. I use that phrase and I shouldn't. But I totally get what you're saying, because, yes, it's, obviously he became the youngest man to win all 4 majors.
Yes.
Across his young career at 22 years. So, yes, that should be the phrase rather than Grand Slams. We are, yes, there's a few of us that are guilty of that. So now that you've put that out there, I'm going to put that in a firm biro in front of me every time to never say that, because you're 100% correct. Yeah.
Well, when I had a look at it, Serena Williams, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, the brilliance that they've shown over certainly the last 20, 25 years, never been able to do it. No matter how good they were, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And the last person to do it, Steffi Graf, was 1988. So I think look, we all want it to happen, right? Because it just shows a level of achievement, but let's hold it up there and not water it down. That's what I say.
No, exactly right. And if there's one person that can do it, it's Carlos Alcaraz. I mean, I said on the show Monday on the First Serve that, and I said this during our commentary over the last 2 weeks, that I'm of the firm belief that he's going to break all the records in tennis. And right now, it's he and Sinner. And I think there's even a gap between he and Sinner, in that, certainly in their head-to-head. And then the rest of the field have got a lot of work to do. Let's put Novak aside for a moment, but Zverev, all those guys in the top 10, Ben Shelton, who I think's actually got some real weapons and could threaten, but then he gets taken to the cleaners by Sinner last week and made to look second rate, even though he's sending in to serve at 230 Ks. So realistically, yeah, they could dominate, and particularly Alcaraz, who's got a better game He is the number one player in the world and could very well pass Djokovic's 24 majors.
Well, thanks for being on Sportsfan Radio today, Brett. Really enjoy talking tennis with you. Now, just for the viewers, the First Serve, where can they get onto the First Serve every week?
Yeah, so we're live every Monday night, 8 p.m, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So you can find us on an SEN frequency, depending where you live around Australia. You'll find us on a frequency, or download the SEN app to your phone. You can take the First Serve anywhere. You can Bluetooth it to the car, you can walk the dog, you can be in the gym, whatever you like. And if you do miss the show live on a Monday, it's always podcast. So you can subscribe to the First Serve through your preferred podcast platform. Listen back when it suits you. Thefirstserve.com.au is our home. We've got a great team of writers putting together some great content. And the news cycle of tennis doesn't stop for anyone. So our social channels are, pumping out plenty of information every day, Mark. So, we're keeping an eye on everything domestically and certainly abroad. But love to get people on the phone. Love the interaction. We're live on the radio. We're the only show in the world that is live and interactive, talking the world of tennis. Love when people jump on and give us a call.
Well, I must admit, I couldn't listen live the other night, but your idea of the podcast is a terrific one, because in doing some research for this show, I was sitting there yesterday afternoon, just listening to your dulcet tones, and you're right. Listening to those call-in callers certainly increases the interest. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, we love Harry. Harry from Belmore. He's my favourite call. He's in a nursing home up in Belmore, and he takes me down memory lane. We've just got to watch his P's and Q's at times. The dump button sometimes is ready to go. Mark, he's a little old school, but he comes up with some absolute gold, and this is what I love about radio. You never know who's listening, and I love when people call in from everywhere.
All right, Brett, thanks very much for being with us this afternoon.
Pleasure. Thank you.